I'm just trying to share my screen. Bear with me for a moment.
Will this recording be shared after this session?
It will, yeah.
Oh, thank you.
There we go. Hopefully you can see that. And we're on. So thank you for bearing with me. Welcome to this session, which forms part of Getting on Board's Trustee Learning Programme. My name is Fiona McCausland. And today we are talking about types of charity income, what new trustees need to know. Just before I hand over to our absolutely brilliant duo of speakers, Liz Pepler and Carol Akiwumi, I'll just cover off some housekeeping. So we are recording this session. You will get access to all the slides and recordings used following this. The recordings may be added to YouTube at a later date. Please stay muted on the call unless you're asked to unmute. It helps to make sure everybody can hear clearly. Closed captions are available, which you need to enable at your end. I'm just moving this over so you can see more clearly. Please use a chat to ask questions and share any experiences. We'd love to hear from you. There'll be pauses along the way to take the questions. Please keep your comments respectful and useful. And finally, thank you to our sponsors, Rathbones, for supporting the Trustee Learning Programme. It allows us to make this session and the whole programme free to attend, which really supports our mission to make quality learning accessible to as many trustees and aspiring trustees as possible. And now, without further ado, I'm going to hand over.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Carol Akiwumi, and I'm really pleased to be able
I think you might be muted. We can't hear you.
Oh, really? Okay. Sorry.
I can hear you,
No,
Carol.
I'm not.
I can hear Carol.
Can you?
I can hear Carol.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm not sure what's happened, Fiona, but they can hear me, so that's
there.
Sorry? Can you hear me?
Fiona, can you hear us?
Hello?
I'm just going to put in chat.
Okay, I can hear you now. Yep.
Oh, great. Okay.
Okay, is that any better?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, all right, cool. So hi everyone, my name is Carol Akiwumi, and it gives me absolutely great pleasure to be able to just, contribute to this session. Liz was very kind to invite me, and I really appreciate that. So we're going to be talking today about the types of charity income, what trustees need to know. And just before we get started, I thought I might start with a quiz. So this is 3 questions. It should literally take you 30 seconds if you're fast. So I'm just going to pop it in the chat for everyone. I hope everyone can see it. So just literally go to this link and click on it, and it should just take you straight to the quiz. And then I shall reveal the answers. So whilst that's getting ready, what I'll do is also share my screen whilst you're all doing that. So if you've done it, just put a yes in the chat, and then we know, and then we can move on very, very quickly, because I've only got 9 minutes left to share. So if you've done it, just tell us, just say yes, that would be good. Great, Liz has done it. Okay, great. Can you all see my screen? Hold on. Can you all see my screen? If you can, just let me know as well. So, okay, I've got 2 screens here, so I can see you guys there, and yeah. Okay.
I can see your screen.
Thank you. That's really helpful to use your voice. Listen, I'm going to carry on because I don't want us to lose what we're doing. I mean, the idea today is really to share for new trustees, a little bit from our own expertise. Our focus today will be helping you to understand different types of income that charities commonly rely upon and what trustees need to know about managing these resources effectively. So yeah, if you've done the quiz, that's good. I will reveal the answers now. I can't see the chat, but I'm assuming everyone's done it. But if you haven't, well, there's a sneak preview. Okay, all right. So here we go. According to Charity Commission, total charity income for 2021-22 was 83.8 billion, with a total spend of 80.1 billion. I mean, and we're talking 169,000 odd charities. At first glance, it looks as if income's going down from 84 billion in 2020-21, but actually the number of charities have also reduced in number. But I think for me, the main surprise, and I don't know what you chose in your quiz answer, but for me, the main surprise was Save the Children rising to the top. How many of you were also surprised? Yep. That's right. Because for a long time, cancer research was at the top. And I cannot believe, I mean, how many people can believe that Save the Children is raising more than, I don't even want to disgrace myself. Like it is 1 billion, 1.3, right? Liz, you're the finance person. Confirm that I'm not imagining things. Yeah, okay, I'm not. Okay, great. I mean, I'm both stunned, impressed, and amazed, but also very encouraged because there's a lot of money. This tells you, if you get nothing from this little quiz and the answers, that there's a lot of money in the sector. So it doesn't matter where you're at now, there is the potential to raise money. The British public is very, very generous, okay? And there are so many different sources to get money from. The good thing about it also is that it just shows that within the charity sector, we've got the funds to help us address societal needs, to make huge impact. And so today we're going to look at the common sources of charity income, the origins, raising methods, and then Liz is going to come in with the accounting practices, restrictions, and considerations, that trustees need to have when balancing these income sources. Now, the common sources are mostly, it just divided into three. Honestly, it doesn't matter where they come from. It's divided into three sources. So you have investments. Now, if you look at the bigger ones, part of the reason why they have so much money is because they have lots of investments that also yield money for them. So that's revenue that's generated from financial, sources, investment sources. So that would include dividends, interest, returns from endowment funds, those sort of things. Also stocks, bonds, property. For example, a charity might invest in stocks that pay dividends, and that will provide a steady income stream. I'm sure in your mind, if you're a small charity, you're thinking, oh my goodness, I hardly have any reserves, not to talk about, investing. But no fear, it is possible, it's being done. Now, voluntary income is what most people are used to. So that will be your donations. There'll be contributions from various sources. For smaller charities, the bread and butter tends to be grants making, trusts and foundations. You'll also have sources of voluntary income from individuals, from corporations, from events. For instance, you might have an annual gala event, and these sorts of voluntary income tend to come from cash, non-cash sources. And now more than ever, we find that there's a rise in digital fundraising. And so the third way that a lot of nonprofits generate their income is through earned income. So that's income that's derived from activities that are directly tied to your charity's mission, like fees or services that you provide, or maybe even through trading. You might sell merchandise, or you might actually decide that you're going to sell things from your service users. A lot of nonprofits are doing that right now. Now, we also have government grants and contracts, and funding from government bodies tend to be for specific projects or services that are provided by charities. And those would also count as donations or earned income, or voluntary income. Donations, voluntary income, or earned income, respectively, depending on what it is that the government is giving you money for. A lot of big charities, receive significant portions of their income from donations, from fundraising events. I mean, I know definitely British Heart Foundation, for instance, that's the case with them. Whereas you'll find that for some others, they will have lots of investment portfolios or maybe endowments. You need to think about what's possible, what's practical for your charity, but also your capacity. I want to very quickly talk. I mean, we're going to talk about all sorts of other things, but the thing that I want to raise here is the fact that we're only going to be spending not more than an hour talking to you about this, but there's so much help. Google's your best friend. Charity Commission is your next best friend. So, I mean, when it comes to fundraising and your trustee duties, first and foremost, you really need to understand that the buck stops with you and your co-trustees. You're legally responsible for your charity's fundraising. You need to make sure that you have effective control over it, because it's a vital part of compliance, with your legal duties. And in particular, there are 3 things that are relevant to the fundraising and trustee duties guidance that the Charity Commission provides. The first is making sure that you're acting in the best interest of your charity. The second is managing your charity's resources responsibly, and that includes protecting and safeguarding its reputation. And the third is acting with reasonable care and skill. Now, they're not new duties. They're part of your existing trustee duties, so you should be familiar with them. And you also have, so that's the essential trustee, CC3, it's called, will give you all of what you need to know. And you can check that out, read it, and get acquainted with it if you're not already. Normally, when you join a board, you should be given that anyway, as a matter of course. Now, when it comes to fundraising, particularly, it's important for the trustee body to have people who can actually devote some time and have appropriate skills and abilities to be able to help with either directing or bringing in income for the charity. Many smaller charities don't even have paid staff. So this kind of support is really important and needs to be something you prioritize. The guidance that you'll find that the Charity Commission provides actually recognizes that, many trustees, rather than carrying out day-to-day tasks and functions, will have systems in place for achieving this. So if you can't do it on a day-to-day, make sure that those systems are in place, because that's your legal responsibility. But ultimately, you cannot delegate your responsibilities. So your systems and processes should allow you and your co-trustees, to hold others to account for how they carry out, the fundraising, and also all the things surrounding that, making sure that they're raising money in a way that complies with GDPR and all other legal, you'll find the Information Commission's office has, guidelines also to make sure that people don't abuse the information that they hold and they gather. So do check those out. ICO is very useful, and you should be registered with them as a matter of course. The other thing also is that you need to be you need to make sure that you have access to the right information and advice, appropriate level of detail, and in the best format. You and your fellow trustees should have the ability and willingness to actually interpret and question fundraising information that you receive. It's so important. You must be assured that your charity's fundraising is compliant with the approach that you set and the standards that are required by you. I do want to say when it comes, and I'm going to hand over to Liz very quickly, but I do want to say that when it comes to income generation, the one thing for me that's just critical is that you diversify. I cannot stress it enough. Diversify, diversify, diversify. This works as much in real life for your own personal, income streams. The more income streams you have, the more sources of income you have, the more resilient your nonprofit is going to be. And on that note, I would like to hand over to Liz. Liz, would you like to tell us about resilience and all the other things that, finance people get up to?
Thanks, Carol. I think you make it sound more interesting than it is, but I'll happily talk about what finance people get up to. And I could listen to you talk about all things, but particularly fundraising all day, Carol, because you actually really, really know your stuff. And that was really interesting. Thank you. And what I really liked about that was that there is an overlap, and actually some of our content is similar, as you would kind of expect, because actually finance and fundraising get on really well because we both really, really get money. It doesn't mean to say there isn't tension between the two. Fundraisers tend to overstate income, I find, and finance people tend to understate it. But I think when you get that marriage working really well in an organization, it's really potent. Okay, so what do we need to know? So I might skip through some of these because Carol's covered a bit of it. This is about me. I'm not going to go in that in detail, but what you should know is that I've worked in the sector 20 odd years. I'm not a chartered accountant. I'm a certified bookkeeper and I've got a master's in it, in charity finance and accounting. Super helpful, both those things. But what was really helpful actually was just rolling up my sleeves and doing it on the job in charities for 20 years. And I think everyone has an inner finance director. So if you're down the more fearful end of finance, which some people tell me they are, don't worry. I think it's in there. Don't be bamboozled by the numbers. The fear that we feel when we deal with finance is just our bodies saying, actually, this is important. I need to go a bit slower and double, triple check. Don't let the fear get in the way. Finance is one of the most exciting bits of working with a charity because you get to see the engine, you get to see all the pushes and pulls and how the money changes the world. And that's the really exciting bit. And what I'm going to talk about now draws a little bit on the charity commission guidance that Carol's referred to. And I thought there were 163,000 charities on the register, so I'm embarrassed that that's there. It should be 169,891 or Carol's number. So, round up, be kind to me, don't worry too much. But the guidance is written for all of them. When we read it, we have to find ourselves in it, okay? It's not standards based. It doesn't say you must do this and you must do that. It does a bit, but mostly it's principles based. We take a risk-based approach here. We use our judgment there. So when I'm talking today about the guidance, it's just 1 star in the universe of charity commission guidance. Go in, pull your sleeves up and read it all. Well, read the bits that are relevant. There's loads of it. So this is for new and aspiring trustees. And I think when we talk about finance, we tend to think it's quite dull. But when you're talking about charity finance, is anything but dull, because it's really actually, it's a bit more complex. It's a bit more complicated than it is if we're in the for-profit sector. And we're going to look at why. And as Carol said, our Bible, our opening entry point is CC3. I'm not going to go over it because Carol's already said it. The buck stops with us as trustees. And when it comes to finance, that can feel a bit daunting if we're a bit underconfident with finance. But don't worry, because actually we just take it step by step by step, and comfort zone stretch. Just keep asking the curious question, and I think things tend to work out fine. If you're not sure where to start with finance, start here. Just go. It's in November 2020, the Charity Commission brought out some 5-minute guides in response to COVID to help trustees get clear through all the noise and work out what we really need to do. And this video, I think, is even shorter. I think it's 3 minutes. So afterwards, when the link comes round, just click on that if you're new to finances. That's a really good introduction. what you'll find quite quickly when you start working with charities, if you haven't already, is that not all money is equal. We have funds, and it's the funds element actually that makes us have to just, I think, go a bit slower and really work out what's going on. So money comes into our charity, and it might be restricted to a particular purpose. So we can't use it on everything in our organisation. That means we can only use it on a little bit of our charitable objects. And that's a lawful restriction. So from an accounting point of view, we need a system and a process to track that restriction from the point that the income is received, to the point that it's recorded, to the point that it's spent, and to the point that it ends up in our public facing accounts. And there are different types of restricted income. I wish it were that simple, that it's just restricted or not. But you can get into a wonderful world of endowments, and we're not going down this rabbit hole now, but sometimes you get a big lump of money, you restrict it, it's capital. That's what a charitable foundation will have. They'll invest it, it will throw off income that's given out in grants. But and even the endowments are fascinating because you get permanent and expendable. Rabbit hole, not going down there. If it's not capital and it's just income, just revenue, that's fairly simple. And for smaller organisations, the lion's share, overwhelmingly, it's restricted income rather than endowment. If it comes free from restrictions, this is gold. An unrestricted pound, without a doubt, is worth twice as much as a restricted pound because we can do what we want with it. It gives us agency, it gives us security. We can ring fence it. We can say, right, our minibus is dying and we need a new one next year, so we're going to ring fence that bit of our unrestricted pot to buy the minibus next year. Anything we don't designate goes into what is called the general pot. And it's from the general pot that we might buy some fixed assets. And anything that's left is known as our reserve. And the reserve figure in charities, if you're new to charities, or maybe you're an existing trustee, this is the probably, I would say, most important figure. We all obsess about how much money is coming in and how much money is going out. Really important. What we really want to know is how much have we got in reserve and have we got enough? Because it's reserves that give us our resilience. Restricted funds are really important. They help change the world. You know, they go out on projects and win hearts, change minds, make oceans cleaner. But the unrestricted, where the reserves sit, is the bit that when a member of staff goes off on sick and we need to get a temp in, when the minibus dies and we need to get a new one, when the church's got a hole in the roof, we've got a pot of savings money that we can dip into. It's where it's critical reserves. And so the takeaway from this slide, from an accounting point of view, is really, you don't have to worry about all the boxes. Just remember, there are two types of money. There's restricted and there's unrestricted. And unrestricted is where our reserves sit. And that's gold. That is the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. I need to keep an eye on time because I can really go on. Okay. And so here, this is from NCBO's Almanac it comes out every 2 years, I think, or it might be every year, and it gives you a snapshot of all the data in the sector. It's really fascinating. And this just shows us, these are the different types of income that Carol referred to. Public income, by far and away the biggest income stream, closely followed by government. And then down here, we've got trust and foundations and investment money and a bit of lottery money. So by far and away of Carol's 3 income types, donations, voluntary income, it is the highest, the biggest source. And then the government contracts probably sit in the earned income. And I've used that typology as well, because that's how we think about it in the sector. We've only really got 3 income sources: fundraising, which is in the gift economy, donations really, selling goods and services, which is earned income, trading, and investment income. And we're growing a meadow. Carol's point about diversification is so true. We're growing a meadow. We want as much diversity as we can possibly get. If we've only got earned income, that's okay. Make that bit diverse. If we've only got voluntary fundraising income. That's okay. Make sure there are different streams in there. And so I'm going to whistle through these really quickly. Each of these income sources has got a guidance note. If it's got CC before it, that means charity commission, and they will be 40 pages long, and you cannot possibly cover them in 10 minutes. So what I've done is pull out some of the key things, but they might not be the key things for your charity. So always go back to the guidance. But just, I think the takeaway is this point that the buck stops with us. So we just need to be aware of what's going on and make sure that whatever we're raising and receiving is in the charity's interest. And critically, from a finance point of view, just have the systems to track it, have budgets, track the costs, be aware, really track the restrictions, make sure that your budgets are done by restricted, non-restricted funds. Your annual accounts will have to be done that way too, and a good charity accountant will help you with that. And make sure you've got access to all the relevant tax reliefs. We've got a duty to optimise that. And when we're talking about protecting the assets, that's all assets, including those non-monetary ones. And then Carol referred to those as well. And if we're working with third-party fundraisers, we need good systems for that. There are rules around that. So again, just check the guidance and make sure that... I went to a board meeting last night. I've been a trustee treasurer on and off since 2007, and I've joined this new wonderful local charity that does reduce, reuse and recycle, and it's an environmental one. And I was looking at the budget, looking down all the income streams, feeling totally baffled, overwhelmed, and thinking, I'm sure I can get my head around this. I've been doing it for 20 years. It will be fine. But at the beginning, it always feels a bit overwhelming, and that's okay. Deep breath. I'll get there. Just keep asking all the curious questions. What's this for? What kind of income is this? And then you start to piece it together in your head. And you think, okay, that's fundraising income. Great. I'll read CC20. Ah, that's earned income. Fantastic. I'll read CC35. The takeaway for this is enormous, this subject, trading. We can't trade freely. It's regulated. We can trade a bit if it's within our charitable objects. If it's outside of our charitable objects, we can trade a little bit. But we can't trade a lot outside of our charitable objects. Then we need a trading subsidiary. And I think the takeaway is just to think, if I'm trading, am I allowed? If not, are there regulations I need to follow? Will there be tax implications? And do I just need to get advice? And the requirement of CC35 actually is often to get that advice. So with CC20, it's quite straightforward fundraising. Earned income is a little bit more complex. So I would absolutely read CC35 when you're thinking about getting your earned income streams, and take that advice where needed. And to be honest, it's the same for investments. Know what kind of investments you're allowed to engage with, and know the regulations for working with investment managers. I used to be an FD, a finance director at a grant maker, and had to think a lot around investment policies and different investment portfolios and working with investment managers. And CC14 is really super helpful. So if you do have that as part of your income stream, read through CC14 and cherry pick the bits that work for you, and just be mindful that, again, it's an area where professional advice might be needed. And for the avoidance of doubt, this isn't it. And I think I'm going to stop talking in a minute. What I would say is that this is an example of a statement of financial activities. So this is an income and expenditure account, profit and loss account. It's a charity commission example. And you can see here how we end up accounting for these different income streams. We have voluntary income at the top. We have activities for generating funds, a fund-raised income here. And then we have investment income. And this here is where the earned income sits. And when you're on the board and you're looking at your annual accounts and the numbers are swimming around the page, I think this is really interesting. Which bits are sitting where? What kind of income have we got? And what do I need to be mindful of? Don't be bamboozled by all the terminology. Read the guidance. The mist does start to clear, and you can really start to understand how the charity works. And the other thing I would say is that Business models aren't easy in our sector. Know where your arrows are. If you get project money in and it covers your project expenditure, fantastic. It might also make a contribution to your overhead. It might not be enough, so you might raise enough income here to give yourself a fully funded infrastructure, central function, back office, core office, whatever you want to call it. And you might use some of your unrestricted that you generate over here to subsidize another project where you can't get full cost recovery. And that's a technical term. All that means is that the funder's only giving you the money for the direct project costs, not the overheads. And you might have some reserves. And so at the moment, it might seem a bit, I have no idea what my business model is. But again, it's the clear. You can start to pin it together in your mind. And then when you've done that, there are questions. We don't have the answers always in finance, but we do have the questions. And I'm not going to go through them now because I'm going to stop talking or I will overrun. But when this comes around, have a look at the questions and just be the curious trustee, and don't be fearful of asking that question, because by far and away, without a doubt, over the last 20 years, the best finance questions I've ever had have been from the non-finance trustees. So be curious, ask the questions, and don't worry about what you don't know. The comfort zone stretches. Keep asking the questions and piecing it together. So I'm going to stop there for now, and I'm going to ask you, Carol, a question.
Yeah.
And that is, if we go back to these income streams that we've got here, you've worked with hundreds of charities over the years, all around the world. And in your experience, you know, you've done startup, scale up, trade up, you've done the whole breadth. Not all organisations can access all types of funding, can they? What's your advice for new trustees navigating this meadow? How do they know where to begin and where to look?
Thank you. That's such a great question, honestly, because you read my mind. For me, I think the critical thing to take away, if you take away nothing else, is what I said: diversify, diversify, diversify. It's so important. I want to come back to that, and I want to really expand on that a little bit. So I want to share with you like some of the things that I'll tell people if I was like delivering training, but I'll run through it. So I'll focus on why it's important to diversify, because that's what I would advise people to do. And also, I would also focus on how you can diversify. And I've got some bullet points here. So I'll just share my screen again, just to make it easier. And that is not the screen you want. So I don't know if I can find it, but let's see. Hold on a minute. Why and how to diversify. Because, okay, so a little bit of my background whilst I'm trying to get this up. I'm an economist. I have a degree in economics and one in economics and finance, a master's. And I've always been fascinated with entrepreneurship and income generation. And in fact, that's what's, we do, my organization. We use financial education to tackle economic inequality. And the one thing I can tell you is that across the board, when it comes to, financial resilience, the best way of achieving that is through diversifying income streams. So let me just try again and see if that works. Portion of screen. Okay, so here are some of the, I should have really, okay, I'm gonna try that again one more time because my tech should not fail me today, not today of all days. Present view, I'm aware that we are running out of time. Okay, so let's go back to Zoom. Share screen, share. Ah, perfect. Okay, that works now. Can you see it now?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, all right. So these are the reasons why we want to diversify. I mean, I'll tell you how in a little bit, but I always think if you understand why, it makes it easier to then do the how. Obviously, risk mitigation, and Liz has covered a lot of this, so there'll be a lot of overlap, but just because of how important it is. It's just really, you want to make sure that you're not relying on a single source of income, because that will expose you to significant risks. And I can tell you this from experience, you know, the last thing you want to do is to be dependent on grant makers, for instance, because if they pull their funding or you run out of it, you're going to be in serious trouble. But if you diversify your income streams, it'll help to spread the risk across multiple income sources. So it'll reduce your vulnerability to any kind of disruption in one source. So the second thing, obviously, is financial stability. It provides that more stable financial foundation. When one source fluctuates or faces challenges, others may compensate. So it'll ensure a more consistent flow of funds. And whatever you do, Liz said it, unrestricted income is king. You want to make sure that you're focusing on that. It's about sustainability. You know, we've talked about that, having a mix of streams. Obviously, think about now we've been in a cost of living crisis. I can tell you from experience, and let me just give you a practical example. We got a grant to build a platform a couple of years ago, and the funder decided to taper off the income. This year, the amount was really, I mean, it just did not even cover the renewal costs. Everything went up. And if we didn't have other sources of income, it would have been really difficult to continue maintaining that platform. So it helps you to adapt to changing circumstances, economic conditions like the ones we're in, but also shifts in donor behavior, because over time, people change, their circumstances change as well. And if someone wants to cancel because they're facing a cost of living crisis, you're not going to hold that against them. The thing also is that the more income streams you have, the better confidence you're going to instill on those who support you. And of course, there's going to be growth with diversified income streams. You will grow, okay? And yeah, and at the end of the day, what you want to do is to make sure that you're aligning with good governance practices and your regulatory requirements, because we're trustees, we're not really fundraisers. So it's important that you diversify. So these are the reasons. Now, if we kind of think about how we can do that, the how is these points. First of all, start with an audit. Begin by understanding exactly what income streams exist, and how they contribute to your overall budget. Then after you've done that, you want to evaluate which sources are the most dominant, which have growth potential or limitations. Once you've done that, then you want to start exploring various avenues for potential income sources that align with your mission and your capabilities. Whatever you do, make sure you have an ethical income policy, because for many, many years, I have seen a lot of charities get stumped when somebody, comes with funding that doesn't quite align with either their ethics or, what they pride themselves on. So start by making sure that's out of the way. And it could be that you want to start foraying into earned income. Liz, I want to ask you to kind of explain, because I heard you talk about the fact that you just can't start trading like that unless it's written into your governance. But what about CIOs? Because I know the Charity Commission for the last decade or so has been encouraging more and more CIOs, because once upon a time, people would register charities and also register businesses, but now that kind of brings both together. So earned income is great. If you can develop services or products that are related to your mission and can be sold to generate revenue, that'll be fantastic. It could be workshops, it could be consultancy services, it could just be merch, whatever. It's really important. We talked about investments earlier on, but one that I want to stress is partnerships. Partnerships and collaborations, always a great idea. There could be something, a charity that's similar to you but doesn't quite do what you do. You can come together, get more money than one of you would have had, or even money that none of you would have had, and actually, deliver something together. Whatever you do, you want to start with a roadmap, and that's your strategy. Also, you want to build capacity and skills. That includes on the trustee board, because if you can bring in somebody who has more knowledge and experience, it helps everybody. Whatever you do, make sure you're taking the temperature, actually evaluating if you're wasting time and skills or whether there's opportunity cost to be doing something else. And that's why you need to make sure you're monitoring and evaluating all of that. Whatever you do, again, we want to encourage you to adopt prudence and transparency. It's the least that's expected. Over to you, Liz. Can I ask you a question? Oh, no. You need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, you can. I was just looking up in response to your question about trading. Yes, what's your question?
Well, I asked you one when I was speaking, which is really important, just to explain to people a little bit more about how they can take advantage of trading, without getting tripped up by the law. And whilst you're doing that, tell us why accountants are so conservative.
Yeah, great question, Carol. I do like working with you, very challenging. Right, okay, friends. So in response to your first question, so I do sessions on charity trading and tax, which looks at CC 35, and they're about 3 hours long. Some of them are full day sessions. Okay, so it's very difficult to answer pithily on that particular question, but you're right that it's a really rich area for charities to grow unrestricted income, and so I am going to attempt to answer. So the question we have to ask ourselves when we're going to generate our own money is it permitted? Because there are so many regulations that come into play. And I think what we can do is say, okay, well, does this, what we're about to do, come within the fundraising exemption? And so the fundraising exemption says, for example, if you're going to have 15 tabletop sales a year, that won't be considered trading. You can do up to 15 and none of the income will be taxable. If you do 16, you could actually inadvertently be trading. You could be competing with some of our private sector cousins and they're going to have to pay tax on their profits. And so actually you might lose your fundraising exemption and all of those proceeds will be taxable. So it's worth thinking, okay, read CC 20 on fundraising, read CC 35 and just familiarize ourselves with the fundraising exemption. If we think, okay, it's not really fundraising, we are actually trading here, and there's no formal definition. There's what is known as badges of trade. So are you doing it with a profit motive? Have you got a shop, that kind of thing? Would it be recognized as a trade? It's all a bit willy. If it is trading, but it's trading within your charitable objects, it's known as primary purpose trading, and that's uncapped, not taxable. A wonderful way to trade, and an example is a theatre, a charitable theatre that sells ticket fees, and those fees would be primary purpose trading. And another example would be anything where beneficiaries generate the income, for example. If it's not primary purpose, but it's ancillary to primary purpose, that's okay as well. So that might be the popcorn at the interval break for the theatre. So it's not primary purpose. The theatre isn't set up to sell popcorn. It's set up to do drama. But it sells popcorn and that's ancillary to the primary purpose. So that's okay as well. Anything else, however, will be capped, and there's a small scale exemption. Let's add that now. Which says that you can, I think it's up to, everyone can go up to £8,000, and then I think it's up to 320 or 25%, whichever is higher or lower. And again, that's fine. But if it's anything over that, you're probably, or any of that, but with big risk, it always says at the end as well, which makes you think, oh, hang on a minute, I now need to read it all again. You probably need to go through a trade-in subsidiary. And you always, when you're trading, need to be mindful of the benefit test. And if you want to read more on this, definitely read CC 35. But also, Sayer Vincent is an audit firm that specialises in charities. and they have trading made simple. I'll add it, and then this will come around with the slides. And it really does make it what's quite complicated regs quite simple. So that's answering, I hope, a little bit your first question. And I've got a picture of my favourite judge, who I think is the one that said, yes, Boris Johnson, you did prorogue Parliament. So I really like her. That's cheered me up. On the other point around why are finance people so conservative? Oh, that's such a great question. I am Eeyore. I can talk any projected surplus forecast down to a deficit within seconds. I interrogate fundraising forecasts. Is this really coming to pass? And there are a number of reasons for it. So one, the finance role is to provide a objective account of the financial position and risk of the organization in numbers. So we use numbers as our evidence. And two, and that makes us conservative because there's not a lot of area there is area for judgment in finance, more than most people think, but we are governed by the numbers. Two, trustees' duty is to be prudent. And that's kind of, I think, the way a lot of finance people think. We do often think in terms of prudence. We want to have quite good attention to detail, make sure the numbers are accurate and correct. I think if you were to do a personality profile type analysis on finance people, we're probably a bit more cautious, and fundraisers are a bit more bold. I kind of think finance people are like Eeyore in Winnie the Pooh, and fundraisers are a bit more like Tigger. They're out there bouncing around, getting loads of money in, being really positive, and we're sitting there as Eeyore going, oh, I don't know if it's really going to come in, and I'm really worried. The third number is that point around the business models. They're fiendishly complex. Precarity is written into our bones. If it made money, the private sector would be doing it. If it broke even, the public sector would be doing it. We are square in a circle all the time, trying to make something sustainable that probably isn't. And I guess many of us have navigated financial difficulty a lot. The first charity I ever worked for closed. So I am really conservative. I double, triple check everything. I don't want to overstate. I don't want to understate. I try and get to the truth of it. But I think what I try and do, if I'm honest, is this. We all want to be sustainable. It's the mantra, be more sustainable. I don't think all charities can be sustainable if our definition of sustainability is to be able to generate our own income to keep services going. I think we can all be resilient if the definition of that is that we can position ourselves to respond to change. And I think maybe sustainability is, maybe having income stability or growth, whereas resilience is the ability to murmurate like starlings, look up and out, what's on the horizon, we've all got an iceberg, how are we going to sail around it? That might mean getting bigger, but it might mean getting smaller now to get bigger later. And so I like your word conservative, and it's probably something I'm going to ruminate on all night now and think, I wish I'd said that, and I wish I'd said that. A chief exec said to me recently, she was doing her, and this will be my closing comment on it, I promise I'll stop talking. We were doing a finance strategy, £1 million turnover organisation working in women's mental health. And they had quite big reserves. Their premises were okay. They wanted bigger, shinier premises with new psychotherapy rooms. And she'd been looking at premises, and we were crunching the numbers to see how affordable it might be in various different scenarios ahead. And at the end of the session, she said, I've really enjoyed working with you. You're like lead, you're my lead feet. She said, I'm like the helium balloon, and I think I'd go off into the stratosphere, but you're the one keeping me on the ground, keeping me rooted in reality. And normally lead feet, being called lead feet, isn't a compliment, is it? But I think she meant it kindly, and I can see what she was saying. And I think that's what finance is. I think finance is the ground in reality, sober in reality, often to otherwise really optimistic views. But what I would say, Carol, is that if you wait for finance people to greenlight everything, I'm not sure any change would ever happen. And so I get really excited working with fundraisers, because I think there's no reward without risk, and it's about having managed risk.
Thank you. I love that. I mean, we've worked so often together, and every opportunity I get, whenever you say yes, I'll have you. So yeah, the love is mutual. Just on somebody's asked a question about a model ethical income policy. Now, I could recommend a few, but I think it's really important to think about what it is and what it isn't. It's not a quick answer, and it's not something that somebody will give you a template and then you just start adopting. You need to have a conversation. I say this because I've worked with the 2 largest development agencies in the world, and I've worked with small nonprofits that have raised less than £10,000, probably, in all the time they've existed. And the one thing I've found is that when they haven't had the conversation and it's not clear exactly what funds are appropriate to receive and what aren't, they very quickly could find themselves in trouble, or they could find that they have conflict. So a lot of religious charities, for instance, will not accept money from the lottery. That's just a very quick example. However, they never have that conversation. So they'll get somebody in who sees no issue with going to Awards for All. I mean, if you've never gotten an Awards for All grant, I don't know what you're thinking about. They've increased it to £20,000 now. It's the easiest thing to get. It's part of, literally your lottery grant. So, and then somebody goes and gets it, and suddenly they're like, hang on, it's from the lottery. We do not get this. But hold on, why didn't everyone know this? And especially those who are responsible. I also saw that's an example of a religious charity, but a very large development agency that works with children around the world. I remember one time helping to do some work with their public fundraising team during an emergency, and we were offered money from Coca-Cola, and it was a lot of money, £150,000, and they were very excited. And I said, hang on a minute, are you sure you can take this? You're a children's charity. And they took a step back and realized, hang on a minute, this will probably blow back if people found out, because of the kind of image we're projecting. So it's worth having that conversation. Having said all that, I have to give a shout out to my very good friend, Ian McClintock, who runs Charity Excellence Framework, because his bunnies can give you a template. So yeah, over to you. If you want to find one, you can go there and get a template, but please do have, oh good, John Lee, I've answered your question and I've sent you Ian's template. Register in Charity Excellence Framework and you can get one, and just, you're welcome. Okay, alrighty, so important to have that. Any other questions, CIOs? Did you want to talk about CIOs and why they're beneficial? If you're a smaller charity and you haven't yet converted and you're not sure, it might be worth thinking about being a CIO instead. Please. And then after that, your one top tip would be great. If they go away with nothing else, what would you like them to do?
Okay. So Fiona, you've really helpfully put information on CIOs in the chat. I'll happily take, if there are any other questions, put them in the chat, or come off mute and ask your questions while we've got these few moments. Converting to a CIO, in my experience, is an interesting, and my experience is really limited, right? So bear that in mind. It's an interesting experience. There are benefits. You get the limited liability. You might get additional powers. You might, around trading and things like that. I don't know that in detail. You would need to check. what I would say is that often you need to close down the existing organisation, and 9 times out of 10, maybe 99 times out of 100, your all relevant bank accounts, etc., and then you do final accounts and you transfer all the assets over to the new entity. And a couple of organisations I'm working with at the moment are finding that transfer to a new bank account really challenging. And I think even the Charity Commission wrote to banks recently an open letter a couple of weeks ago saying it's really quite tough for small charities. And so I think that's probably the only useful thing I could add right now about CIOs, to be honest. I think there are definite benefits, but there are also, there always are, a kind of couple of obstacles on the way that you might need to navigate. So the best advice is to talk to people that have done it, and maybe get that professional advice and work out what the benefits are in total, and then take that journey. Okay, Fiona, sorry, I'll hand over to you now.
Thanks. There's actually somebody has their hand up. We've got a couple of minutes left to answer before I kind of go into wrapping us up. If you want to take that question, ask that person to come off mute and give their question. Do you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, they have.
Sure, 447-909. Yeah, go for it.
Hi there. Sorry, I'm dialing in on my phone, so hopefully this works. This has been so helpful. I just wanted to pick up on the ethical and sponsorship policy you mentioned. I read recently that the Charity Commission were kind of cracking down on charities which declined investment for ethical reasons, and I wondered if you had any more kind of context behind that, and any advice for handling that.
Liz, I'm going to hand over to you because I don't feel I can be objective. My organization has been running a campaign called Operation Transparency, which is calling on Charity Commission to be more transparent around data, trustee data. So I have issues with the Charity Commission's modus operandi at the moment. So I'll hand this over to you. Yeah,
thank you, Carol. So I'm not a fundraiser, and I'm not an expert at all in ethical fundraising, and I'm aware of the regulations. And I'm aware also that some fundraisers I talk to sometimes feel it's an increasingly hostile space, an increasingly closing space, and that it's more difficult for trustees to turn money away on ethical grounds. And I did see that headline recently, encouraging trustees not to be, was the word squeamish? I seem to remember squeamish, but I could be wrong, about different donations. I think in all the time, so some people have been in the sector a lot longer than I have. I've been here about 20 odd years. And over that time, it seems that we go in waves. Sometimes we feel it's quite hostile. Sometimes we feel it's more enabling. And I think at the moment, there is a perception that we are maybe, from some people, that we are maybe, some trustees might be too squeamish, some organisations might be. I think the word woke was levelled at one organisation recently that tried to decolonise its collection. So I think trying to be really objective, I think there are times when it's really legitimate to consider very carefully all your income streams. And if you look at CC20, it's very clear that reputation is part of that consideration, a really valid part of that consideration. I think if organisations, at the same time, trustees do have a bit of a duty to protect the assets and apply them to the charitable objects, and we should be optimising gift aid and tax reliefs and things like that. And some people would say we've got a duty to optimise all the income available to us and our cause. So there is a tension there. So I would be, again, really clear about the guidance, really clear about what our charitable objects are and what we're doing. If we're in any doubt over a particular donation, I would get advice. So I hear what you say. I probably can't add anything intelligible or insightful, I'm afraid. I've just spoken a lot about in a very generic way, sorry. But it's a really interesting comment.
No, thank you. That is helpful to have that long-term context on this. And
yeah, and
yes,
you know,
I'll
this is
definitely
just
take
only
that into account.
particularly my one view, and take it probably with a pinch of salt.
Thank you.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for both of you for a very sensitive and thoughtful answer on that particular question. And also, just I could listen to both of you talk all day. I really could. I've just I filled 2 pages of my notebook of quotes that I will be sharing on Twitter X, but also bringing to my next trustee meeting as well. Just yes, thank you very, very much, and thank you participants as well for your input and questions. That's fantastic. That I shared in the chat evaluations. We're 1 minute over, but please click the link and fill it in. It really helps us to deliver more programs in the future. More learning is available, Trustee Learning Programme. You can find us on Eventbrite, Getting on Board if you don't, or you can follow the link just there. We also, for aspiring trustees, run the Charity Board Leadership Programme starting in January again. Anything else Getting on Board can help you with, please have a look on our website, get in touch. We hope that you've enjoyed today. And once again, thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.